Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes and then I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, it's 9:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Those of you who have joined me this morning, my name's Andy, and I'm one of the librarians at CRC. And I want to start out by saying that I use OER for a class that I teach, and I am the OER liaison for the college to the State Academic Senate. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in OER, so I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. And if I don't know the answer, I will certainly be able to reach out to some of my colleagues who can help me find an answer for you. It would be great and helpful for me if I knew what disciplines that you teach. So if you would be willing to put that information in the chat, that would be great. And before we get started into the presentation, I just want to step back a little bit and acknowledge everything that is happening in our world right now and how disruptive that may be for us and for our students, and how much anxiety that might cause. I know that I appreciated the break so much, and I'll be honest, I wasn't quite ready to be back. And I'm sure that many of our students are feeling that way also. So I just hope that you will take some time to be kind to yourself and be kind to your students, and recognize that all of us are feeling a bit of anxiety, and to try to treat each other with grace, so that as we're moving forward, we understand that things just aren't normal right now. So I'll start with that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. And I also want to just let you know that I have two monitors, and I have chat open and everybody's icon over in my second monitor. So if you see my face turning over here, it's because I'm looking at that second monitor. It's not because I'm getting distracted. Okay, so again, my name is Andy Atkins Pogue. I'm one of the librarians, and I'm also the OER liaison for our college to the State Academic Senate. And today we're talking about open educational resources and their connection to equity. And then it's just a general introduction to open educational resources as well. So if you're not familiar, I'm going to play this short video. I think it's about 2.5 minutes. And this is a really good explainer. So I'm going to start with this.
Open Educational Resources, or OER. What are they, and why should you use them in your courses? Today, we'll answer that question. But first, we have to ask why. There's a problem in higher education today, the problem of high textbook costs. Students today are having a rough time affording all the costs of higher education, and textbooks are a big part of that. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, textbook costs have risen 88% over the last decade, more than 3 times the rate of inflation. These high costs can have a huge impact on students, causing them to drop classes and even majors. In fact, some students have reported not buying the textbook they need for a class just because they know they can't afford it. It's not worth the cost. So what's the answer to this problem? Well, one answer is open educational resources. Open educational resources are educational materials like syllabi, workbooks, textbooks, and videos that are openly licensed and freely available to use and reuse online. The open licenses used for OER give users more freedom to work with the resources than copyright law usually allows. The most common open licenses for OER are Creative Commons licenses. These customizable licenses show users what they're allowed to do with your resource. Can they edit it, sell an adapted version of it, combine it with other materials? These licenses make the answers clear. Now, you might wonder, do OER really help students? Well, having freely available resources removes the roadblock that high textbook costs place on education and makes the materials more accessible for everyone. And classes that use OER aren't too different from traditional classes either. Studies have shown that classes using open educational resources have similar prep times, same or better test scores, and lower drop rates than classes using traditional textbooks. It just makes sense. If students aren't scared and worried about affording their course materials, they're able to put the time and effort into their classes that they need to succeed. Now let's look at how you can use these resources. You have 4 options when you want to use an open educational resource in your class. You can adopt it as is, adapt it to fit your class better or to update the material, create something new to share with educators around the world, or combine multiple resources into one that really matches the needs of your class. You can find OER on various online repositories, but one I really recommend is the Open Textbook Library. Here you can find most of the open textbooks available online, as well as reviews from faculty that have used them in their classes. It's important to remember that you don't have to go into this blind. There is support out there. Other repositories like OpenStax have highly rated materials for introductory or general education courses like astronomy, physics, and chemistry. And if your students prefer print books, OpenStax offers those too. If you want to find supplementary materials or other resources you can use instead of a textbook in your course, sites like OER Commons provide a wealth of resources you can use and easy-to-use software for creating your own OER as well. There are a lot of options out there, so go out and explore. Find OER in your subject area, read reviews, and figure out how you want to use open educational resources in your classroom. If you get stuck, contact us, your librarians. We can always help in some way. That brings us to our final point. Library support. On average, librarians are going to be the most knowledgeable people on your college campus about open educational resources, and the most excited to talk about it. If your subject librarian doesn't know much about them, ask a scholarly communication librarian. Odds are there is someone in the library who can answer your questions.
Okay, I really like that video because she did a great job of explaining it, but she also kept it in pretty generic terms. Even at the end, when she touts the librarians, she doesn't specifically name that where she's from, even though it says in the graphic. But this is an example, and you'll see the attribution underneath that this is an example of an open educational resource. She created this video and she put it under a Creative Commons license and allows other users to use it. And this particular license, you could actually, I could take her script and then redo it myself if I wanted it to be in my voice and have graphics from our library. That's kind of the beauty of open educational resources. And it depends on the license. In this particular one, I would give her credit for it for being the original creator. And then part of Creative Commons is that when you remix something, most of the time you are when you share it, you are also agreeing to share it under a Creative Commons license so that others could take it and remix it as well. So let's talk about this in the context of equity. Why does it help close equity gaps? So if you have never had a student complain to you about the cost of textbooks, I'm surprised. We in the library have students all the time just in panic mode because either they can't afford the textbook, or they're waiting for their financial aid to come in and they can't buy it until they get their financial aid, or they only have a finite amount of money to be able to spend on textbooks, so they're picking and choosing which ones they actually purchase. Some of the statistics that are out there, the cost of textbooks increased 88% in a 10-year period. And so OER helps solve that problem by creating these free and affordable resources. There's also a lot of research, and I'm going to point some out coming up, that students learn more when they have access to the quality materials. And open licensing allows you to remix the content. So I'm certain that if you are teaching a class, that you've come across an example in a textbook, or even as a student reading an example in a textbook and thinking, that just it doesn't apply to me. Well, the beauty about open resources is that you can change those examples, and you can create your own content, and you can make it more meaningful for the students that you know are going to be inside your class. So here's a quote, and I will share a link to this presentation, and I didn't put it in my online guide, but I will put it in that online guide as well. But anything that you see that's in that kind of light blue text that's underlined is a link that goes back to the original resource. So all of this information is out there for you to explore a little bit more. But this is a report, and I liked this quote, and so I pulled it out. It speaks to all three of the great challenges facing higher education: affordability, retention, and completion. How many times have we sat in a convocation and they talk about retention and completion rates? Retention, completion. We got to keep our students, and we have to help them complete. And OER helps close that equity gap by helping in all of these areas. And so I pulled out some statistics from a couple recent surveys that have been published. So Los Medanos College did a survey of more than 1,000 students in 2018. And some of the things that I pulled out of this, students reported more than 40% of the students who responded to this had dropped a class because the textbook was just too expensive. Nearly 60% said they just didn't have the money to purchase the textbook within the first 3 weeks of class. And more than 50%, we're always talking about getting our students to take a full load, 12 to 15 credits. And more than 50% of these surveyed students said they avoided that because they just couldn't afford the textbook. CSU Channel Islands has done a lot of work on examining open educational resources in relation to impacted populations. And in their survey, nearly 90% of their students, now this is all areas, every type of student, experienced increased stress due to textbook costs. So when you have that student that first week of class and they are emailing you or standing in front of you, or maybe they're not saying anything at all because they're afraid to admit that they couldn't purchase the textbook. I would guess that this number would equate to many of our classes as well. 80% did not have the textbook on the first day of class. 65% did not buy the textbook and then later felt like I couldn't learn as much as I would have if I would have had the textbook. And all of those above the statistics were higher for Latinx students versus the white students. And I pulled out one statistic: 4% of white students versus 12% of Latinx students reported failing a class due to textbook costs. So there's really powerful research out there. I pulled some other studies, and these all link to that information. So you're welcome to go explore that on your own. Okay, so let's talk about zero textbook cost courses. I just created this video, and it's really geared towards students to introduce students to the idea of zero textbook costs. But if you're not familiar with it, you should be, because students are going to start looking for these classes in the class schedule. So I'm going to play this quick video. This is, again, a promotional video geared towards students, and we just published this I think a week ago.
The high cost of textbooks got you down? Turn that frown around. Many instructors are now using free resources to teach their classes. It's called zero textbook costs, and it's a state law. All California community colleges, CSUs, and UCs must clearly highlight in the online class schedule which courses use free learning materials. Look for the ZTC symbol in the section details, or use the free textbook filter to find ZTC classes. The cost of textbooks can impact your success. Sometimes the book costs more than the tuition for the course. Make sure your instructors know that you know about ZTC and encourage them to explore and utilize free and low-cost resources when they can. Zero textbook costs, breaking down one barrier to help you succeed. The high cost of textbooks got you down?
So some of the rules behind zero textbook costs. In order to get that symbol in the class schedule, there must be no cost to the student. So if you have a lab manual that's very inexpensive, but you still require students to purchase it, then you wouldn't qualify under zero textbook costs. Right now, the law states that it must be digital, and there's work happening at the state level to kind of revise that language, because there could be situations in which it wouldn't necessarily be an electronic digital copy. So for example, if there were funds in your department to purchase textbooks for the entire cohort, that is something that currently happens in some of our special programs. For example, Puente, for some of their classes, they purchase the textbooks for all of the students, and but they're actual books. So it really is no cost to the student, but it technically, under the law, it wouldn't qualify because it's not a digital copy. So there's work being done to try to revise some of the language that's in the law. Now, for ZTC, it doesn't have to be an open educational resource. So it doesn't have to be something that you have pulled in and either are adopting on your own or remixing or creating new content. It could be some examples. It could be if the library had an unlimited user license to an ebook, it could be that. If it was an article that was from an academic journal that we have access to through the library databases, that would count. So if you had a series of articles that you had your students reading, and they weren't required to purchase anything, this would qualify. It could be a work that is in public domain that's available online. So those are examples that public domain books are open resources, so you can remix those, but it doesn't have to be anything that you could remix. So even if you were using videos, say from Khan Academy or from YouTube videos that you're using, and you're using a series of those, as long as the students don't have to purchase material, then it would count under this. There is a form on the website, on the employee side of the website, and I'll show you how to get to that. I linked to it in here, and that's what you're going to fill out if you are teaching a course that has zero textbook costs, and that's how you get that symbol in the class schedule. And then I just want to let you know that the State Academic Senate has worked on this a bit to get a low-cost textbook designation. And within our district, colleges have worked to get that low-cost designation. So if you have a course where maybe you're using a novel that's $15 or a lab manual that's $10, the designation that we've come up with in the district is $40 or less. And then we're going to have a symbol for low cost designation in addition to that zero textbook cost designation. And I don't know, I see Dan's has popped in, and he's kind of an OER expert within the district. Dan, maybe can you give us a timeline on when we're going to try to have that in place?
I think it will be for fall of 2021. Probably, hopefully in the next month, we'll have a district task force wrap up the details on it, and then get out the information to faculty when they're filling out their textbook or course materials adoption forms, that hopefully that will be a box that we can check that for the low cost designation. So again, yeah, fall is when we're looking for it.
That's great.
Next
Thank
fall.
you.
Wait a minute, we're in spring right now. Yeah, next fall. Sorry.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of logistics involved in this, and nothing is ever easy. And so what we found is what has happened in the past is, for example, if I'm teaching a course and I'm using zero textbook costs, and then something happens and I get taken off the course, but the designation is in there, and then somebody else comes in to teach the course and they want to use a textbook, sometimes there's a disconnect in getting that information updated on the class schedule. But we're pushing to make sure that there's some checks and balances in here. First of all, because it is a state law, but also it's really unfair for a student who registers for a course and registers thinking that they're not going to have to purchase a textbook, and then they show up in the first day of class and their instructor says, yeah, of course you have to buy a textbook. It's a $50 English book. So the district has done a good job in trying to adopt this quickly, but there's still some kinks in it. So one of the arguments that I have gotten recently is that this just isn't worth it because I should be compensated for the work that I'm doing. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But, and this is hard work and it takes a lot of time. But I would ask you to consider something. So not all compensation is monetary. And again, I think of examples when you are looking at a textbook that you're trying to adopt, or even as a student reading a textbook and thinking, I could say that better than they've said it, or I would teach this differently than it's being taught, or I would use a different example, or I would bring more sides on this issue into my students' focus area. So I think all instructional faculty have a little bit of ego, right? We know that we are experts in our discipline. So I think there is some, there's something to be said about creating content and putting it out there and putting your name on it. So I will say that. You also can apply for a type A or type B sabbatical. I linked to the website where that information is, and you have to scroll down a little bit. Unfortunately, it's a Word document. When you click on it, you have to open up a Word document. I wish I've asked multiple times that they not put Word docs on the website, that they make it a PDF, but for whatever reason, it's a Word doc. So that is on the website. Sacramento City College is a sub-awardee of a LibreText OER grant, and this project is just winding down, but there's going to be one more opportunity for people to participate in that. And the way that it works is you go to a presentation where you learn a little bit about OER, and then if you want to move forward, there's an opportunity to sign up to create an outline for an OER textbook. So you're not actually writing the textbook, you are going out and finding material and putting it in the order in which you would like to see it presented. And then you turn it in, you have an opportunity to earn $900 by doing that. And what LibreText is doing is then they take all of those links that you have shared with them and they actually create the textbook for you, so that they kind of do all the work putting it together. And again, the beauty about an OER textbook is, so you've created this, and then maybe in the meantime, you decide that you want to bring in a very current example. Well, once it's out there, it's yours to remix, reuse, recreate whatever you want. So you could easily pull in and take out things that you think aren't necessarily relevant anymore. So that institute is supposed to happen again in April. There's not an exact date yet, but and then the work can be done over the summer. It has to be completed by, I believe, by the end of July. And as soon as I get information on that, I will share it more widely. And I know that there's some people from other campuses here, and all 4 colleges, it's librarians at Sac City who are facilitating this. And so they communicate with all of us, all of the other college librarians. So if you're not at CRC, but another campus, just know that this will be advertised throughout the district. So you'll have an opportunity to participate in that if you're interested. And then the Academic Senate OER Initiative website, they often have opportunities for specific disciplines where they're creating content in specific disciplines, and there are opportunities to be compensated for the work that you are doing through that as well. And I've been trying to publicize that information to the specific disciplines that they're working with when I get it. Sometimes I took on this role as the liaison in the middle of last semester, and so I had a little catch up to do, but I'll try to keep on top of it more this semester. So we'll be sending that information out as it comes. And there's so much information on this website, so I encourage you to check it out. At CRC, we don't currently have a textbook affordability or OER committee. Sacramento City College and ARC, they both have one, and Folsom is in the process of creating one. We are in the process of forming this committee at CRC. It's going to be a shared governance committee that reports to the Academic Senate, and it'll be housed under the Student Learning and Instructional Support branch of shared governance. And so I put a link to a form in here. I'm actually going to stick this in the chat. If you are interested in serving on this committee, it would be great if you could fill that out so I can get some names. And I'll be sending that out college-wide as well. And then I have some additional resources that I've linked to. So again, I was working on these two guides yesterday, and I just couldn't get the second one completed. So this is more of an introduction, and I'm going to show that to you in just a second. And then this is links to specific OER repositories that are categorized by disciplines. So that's kind of a good place to start if you're looking for this type of material. The Academic Senate, their OER initiative website is very good. And then I linked directly to the webinars, and they have many webinars on specific disciplines where faculty in that area has shared some of the work that they've done, and they have kind of repositories and examples of material that they've created and used. So those are all great places. And then I just want to, before I show you that online research guide. So again, this presentation was adapted from 2 other presentations from other colleges and licensed under a Creative Commons license, so that others could come in and take my presentation and adapt it for whatever their needs are, or look at these other presentations. So before I show you the online research guide, I'm gonna stop sharing and just open it up and see if anybody has any questions. Hi, Scott.
Good morning, Andy. It's so good to see you again. I hope that you had a good new year.
I did. Thank you. I hope you did too.
I did. Yeah. And getting, sometimes these days are good to, get us into this mood of back into the groove. Anyway, yes. Sorry. Let's see. So I had the opportunity to work with a team to get a lab manual put together for physical geography lab. And so last semester, I was using a little bit of the content that I was developing there and grabbed a little bit of my old lab manual, and I was able to put it all online. And so of course, digital submission with the way that we were there. Okay, so that obviously zero textbook cost. But when we go back face to face, can I leave an option? So like, if you want to go on to the website, if you want to go into Canvas and get the lab manual yourself, then cool. And fill it out online, that's fine. Submit it online, that's fine. But then can I also, would you recommend for a lab class like that, we give the option of printed ones that they could go and purchase? Or do we just, if they want to have a printed copy, they print their own? Or what's the best plan for that?
I would actually give them that option. I would just make sure that when you are putting in your textbook order, that you clearly designate that it's optional, that it's not required, so that then and try to, sometimes it's hard because the classes load so quick before the semester starts. You don't have a lot of time to actually communicate with the students before the class meets for the first time. But I would try, even maybe in your scheduled notes, put a note in there that says, the lab manual is required. It's available for free within Canvas, but if you prefer a printed copy, you can purchase that at the bookstore, or however you're purchasing it. That's how I would do it.
The only other thing that kind of rattles around, and I guess I just need to go in and tweak with numbers and stuff each iteration. But my other concern is that, my students did all of the digital labs last semester. And now if I assign the same lab manual, then it would make cheating even easier.
Right.
That they could so I guess I just need to go in and rearrange pages or change, the numbers that they're working with some of the problems or something like that. So cool. How is, and it's a bummer that Dan left us because I think he has a good relationship with Follett. How are they with our low cost textbooks? Are they good with our homegrown? They're not making much money off of those, I'm guessing, and Follett's a wonderful, I'm sure they're just there for the students as well, but they're not
Right. um, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that preparing for this semester, the libraries were pushing very hard to be able to make our physical collection available through some sort of pickup or no contact circulation. And in preparation for that, we decided to purchase a bunch of textbooks mostly for science and math, because those are the really expensive ones. And they were great. They worked, they were very responsive and worked really hard to try to find us the lowest price, and were very transparent with, this is available new, but we can also get it used copies and they're a lot less expensive. Would you like us to do that? So I'm hopeful that they have students' best interests in mind. Of course, it's a commercial company, so it is what it is. But I think that I think the individuals who are working within our organization are doing their best to try to accommodate and be helpful to the students.
Cool. Yeah. All right, that's what I got.
All right,
thank you.
Scott. Are there any other questions before I show you this guide? All right, and I'll just go ahead and share it. Let me actually put a link in the chat first. This is the guide. Oops. And then I'll also put a link to the presentation. But honestly, most everything that's in the presentation is in the guide as well. So, but if you wanted to, I don't know, email this to some colleagues or. Okay. So. So eventually there's going to be two guides. This is kind of the general guide on what OER is and what you can do with it. I put some information about the same information that was on the slide and put some research in here. There's an additional section on Creative Commons and Creative Commons licensing. I noticed that in her OER video, she had a link to how to use Creative Commons licensing. So there is a video in here, but I might look at that and potentially add that to this. And then there is kind of some general places to start searching. And these are not organized by discipline. Now, there will be a link in here eventually to the guide that has things categorized by specific discipline, as soon as I have a chance to finish that and publish it. And then I put some information in here for, these are non-OER, which means that you can't remix. They are copyrighted material, but you can still use them. They're freely available online. And so here's some examples of things that you might use. And then I put a little blurb in here to make sure that you don't forget that the library is here and available. And we have streaming media and ebooks and articles. So
Andy, can I interject really quickly? On my screen, and I'm not sure if it's working for any of our other participants, but I just have black, and then across the front it says Andy has started screen sharing. And I'm not seeing actually.
All right. Let me try again. Actually, let me stop sharing. And then I thought to ask, can you guys see, can everyone see my screen? And then I didn't. And now it came back to bite me. Now can you see, are you seeing, still seeing black? Okay. All right, so let me start from the top. What is OER? OER and equity, these are the same studies that were linked within the presentation. Creative Commons, some information on Creative Commons licensing. These are some general places to start. And actually, I'm not done with this list, so there's going to be more in here. And then here's the non-OER, the free online resources. And where I stopped off was don't forget the library. And I linked to our purchase request form. If you're within another college in the district, just reach out to the library. We have a request form. Often I get emails and I just ask them to please fill out the request form so we can kind of keep everything in one place. But let me give you another example. So we have a film studies class, and she normally teaches on campus and they watch the films together, but now of course everybody is online, and commercial films are often not available unless you have some sort of streaming service. And even then it can be all over the place. And so she reached out to me and said, is there any way we can get access to these films? And we were able to purchase streaming licenses for the next year. Commercial films are really expensive to stream. So that's kind of a case-by-case basis. But we also have 2 streaming media databases that have just a wealth of videos, and there's ability at both of those where you don't have to show the entire video or present to your students the entire video. You can actually pick specific clips from those videos and offer that up if you don't want them to see the entire video. And if there's something we don't have, I would recommend reaching out to your library and see if we can get it. And then just acknowledgements again for the resources that were used to create this guide. So that's all I have. It's only 9:45, but I'm here to answer any other questions and anything else that you all have. So if there aren't any other questions, then I will thank you for coming. And even if you're not at CRC, but you have questions and you want to reach out to me, let me put my email address.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate your workshops every semester.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it. Thank you.